Yes,
So
circumstantially they're different. I agree.
I
But
think that makes a huge difference, though.
Really?
Welcome to Musing. Every once in a while, my brother George and I would have these conversations about music. Music is our passion, and it's a huge part of our lives, and we decided to share those conversations with you. So if you love music, sit back and enjoy this podcast.
Okay, welcome back to Musing. Got my brother on the line.
How are we doing?
Good. So today we don't have a subject, but that's on purpose. It's really on purpose, I swear.
Right.
So has it been that long ago? That was 4 or 5 months ago that we did this.
Probably.
Yeah. So we kind of had a conversation that spurred this whole podcast idea, and it was just me kind of, again, we talk about music a lot, and when we do, we just decided that we wanted to share based off this one deadpan call from me to you going, is Boston the greatest band ever? And I know where your biases are, so your immediate answer is yes. I mean, bam, yes. We just stop right there.
Right. But it's not unfounded either.
Right, and that's what we talked about, and that's kind of what spurred us to this whole idea of, we talk about this kind of stuff all the time, and although it's, I would call and joke with you, and sometimes it would be the parting shot right off the bat, but that's what happens. I mean, we would talk about it. We would have a conversation about something like, is Boston the greatest band ever, and that would lead us into a couple different rabbit holes, and I think that's what we wanted to do today. We just kind of revisit both that subject and what happens when we have those conversations and kind of let it go wherever it was going to go. So hey, is Boston the greatest band ever?
Yes, and here's why. You could argue that. We did a top 10 list and all this stuff, and obviously one of their songs will forever be my top 10 because of the feel, because of what I get out of it, and as we preface 90% of these, this is a purely opinionated and opinion driven. And that's where, the listener comes in. We love the feedback, love the responses, love the tweets, the retweets, the emails, anything reaching out, Facebook, any kind of social media. If the listener wants to join in on this and put their proverbial 2 cents in, that's what we're here for.
Exactly.
We don't do this for the money. We do it just for the fun, and we don't wake up early in the morning to record in silence just to hear ourselves talk, although most of the time that's
what we end up doing anyway.
But you could make an argument that Boston was the simplest rock and roll band, and I think they were the best at it in an era of, let's face it, late 70s rock. That was littered with obscene talent.
That's an understatement.
I mean, you're talking 77, 8, 9. I mean,
well, and not just talent, but people that were changing the landscape of rock.
Right. Well,
they were inventing what modern rock is today.
Right. I just say forming the bedrock of rock and roll, basically. And I think Boston just did it better than everybody else. I mean, you can make arguments for any of them. Your Led Zeppelin, or even the corporate rock scene, Bad Company, Journey, Foreigner. It was littered. The landscape was littered with, like I said, obscene talent. I mean, when you you can pick one. But I think Boston was just more polished, more refined, or more talented as far as the musicians and singer was concerned than what was out there. I mean, you can argue, Led Zeppelin and so on and so forth, but I honestly believe that what they did and the way they did it, Tom Schultz mixing and production. The guy was an MIT graduate. He built his own heads, and he built most of the equipment for bands in the 70s. Tom Schultz pretty much made from scratch. So
Well, and he was one of the innovators of the quote unquote stomp box for guitars.
yeah,
I mean, he was the one that took a lot of the effects that they were traditionally doing on either a board or in post production and put those into a box that you could run a cable into and then run that cable into your amp, and it changed the tone or distorted the tone or chorus delay. He really took a lot of that idea and put it into a small compact box that you could turn on and off basically with your foot.
right,
For those not guitar players, it's something that it is still carried throughout today. That and it's a big argument between guitar players. Some guitar players want the effects still to be in the amp head or in an effects processor on the floor in one big box, but some guitarists are just dead set on the pedal idea. And I
right,
went back and forth myself. I've used both, but he was an innovator in that. He and you can hear it in his sound. I mean, when you listen
right.
to the recordings, like Boston, the first album is 42 years old.
You shut your mouth.
I know, I'm not even joking, man. Not even joking. But if you listen back to it, the guitar sounds are amazingly crystal clear. I mean, yes, it's been remastered, but yeah, sometimes good.
But not to a great extent, because if you listen, my biggest challenge or my biggest thing with Boston always was the headphones test.
Right.
I say headphones, we're in an era of earbuds and so on and so forth. So pick your poison. But if you listen to Boston in the headphones, it's full, I don't know, it's fuller. It's more full. It's the sound surrounds you. The production, post-production of Boston's music, of Tom Schultz mixing that sound, and there's not too much bass, there's not too much drums, there's not too much guitar, there's not too much vocals. It's all flawlessly rounded.
Yeah, exactly.
Everybody sounds perfect. There's
and level. Everybody sounds level. They're if you look at a lot of those, not to cut you off, but if you look at a lot of those bands in that time, and even up till now, I mean, there's a lot of bands that one thing will stick out. I mean, if you if you listen to Slash's Snake Pit, you're going to hear guitar out front, and
right.
because you've got a heavy hand when you go into the mixer or the
Sure.
producer and go, I'm and I'm not saying he did this. I'm just saying that's the way it feels, that he would go in and say, can you push me up a little bit? Can you get me out in front a little bit?
Well, obviously, and Journey was, vocal driven,
Yep,
because
exactly.
of, Steve Perry's prowess, and likewise, I mean, and again, the drill. I mean, I'm not a huge Led Zeppelin fan, but that's probably as close as I could make an argument, against Boston, because there were four guys that were, really talented too. But it was I would fight somebody on it wasn't mixed as well. It almost sounded separate. I mean, whereas Boston was just like a full-bodied. Again, it's hard to explain unless you listen to it, but anything. I think maybe it was just the production. It was mixed better than anything else in the late 70s that made them better than everybody else. And they're still, I mean, the music, the relatively short musical legacy. But they didn't have 22 albums. I mean, they had 2, basically 3.
Right.
And I mean, you can include a greatest hits there that they released not too long. I guess it's probably a lot longer than I think so now, but that had like a couple lost tracks, after Brad Delp died.
Right.
But other than that, I mean, there's not, 14 albums. There's not even 10 albums. There's not even 6 albums. And for a short musical legacy, what they packed into those albums would have to be an argument for a small library or a small catalog. It'd have to be an easy vote for me. But and as regular listeners know, I'm extremely biased.
Well, but it lends some reality to what you're saying, but it also lends some, I don't want to say discredibility, but it does. I don't think it takes away from the statement still, though. Like you said, the drums they fit perfectly. The bass just slides right through every song. When the difference between Schultz playing acoustic and Schultz playing electric is, I don't want to say different person, but man, it has a different feel. The acoustic feels like someone who knows what they're doing with acoustic, and then the electric sounds like somebody who's been playing rock guitar forever. It's
right. Well, some of that, I mean, Del played acoustic on some of their songs too.
True.
But again, I mean, I could argue all day. I mean, and that's the thing, or that's the beauty of this whole thing. These conversations, podcasts, and cold phone calls. That's what it's about. I mean,
yeah.
you could make an argument, and I'm open-minded, and like I said, we've got a lot of social media outlets and emails and everything else, so change my mind.
Yeah, exactly. That's where I was just going to go with it is for me, I just, it was like the parting shot. It was like basically the initial parting shot for me was to call and challenge you and say, hey, are they really? And, I don't agree, but I don't disagree. I think they're definitely one of the top 10 probably of all time ever rock bands. But, I've got my biases.
Well, with no criteria, it's hard
Right.
to argue one way or the other. I mean, what is the criteria for the best band ever?
Yeah, I think, but it's rounded. I think it's album sales, it's reach, it's fan base, it's technical prowess, it's sound. It's ability to use your instrument the way it's supposed to be used, or even pushing it like, if you look at a band like Rage Against the Machine, where, he took guitar sound and just twisted it on end and made, completely different sounds out of it and stuff. So, but, what makes that rounded and what makes that not rounded, So
well, they were on a top 10 list. I just read it. I don't know if we're allowed to cite sources or not.
Yeah, that's fine. And I'll start putting those links in there too. So
Loudwire had a top 10 list of bands that made a career of not changing their sound, and Rage Against the Machine was like number 3, if I remember right.
Yeah.
You know who number 1 is, and I'm not going there.
Not AC/DC? Don't tell me.
They are number 1.
Well, I would agree with that.
But Rage Against the Machine, it struck me to be that high. I mean, yeah, a lot of it sounded alike, I guess, but that seemed awful high because and ZZ Top wasn't on the list. So
because if you look at songs like LaGrange and there was another real slow one that was on a couple later albums. But,
oh yeah, but I mean, AC/DC's got
Ride On,
like the Jack and Ride On and whatever.
That's
too,
true. And Big
Balls.
Balls.
Lot of Rosie's big, very right. So I mean, but again, it was when you mention Rage Against the Machine, I don't think they should be in a conversation of the best band ever. That's for sure.
Well, to tie that around, Morello, I was talking about him playing changing the sound of guitar and
sure,
him, we're a year out. I know this is going to date the recording. Unfortunately, I hate doing that, but we're just a couple days over a year out from Chris Cornell, anniversary of his death. Was it yesterday?
Yesterday.
Yeah, and Morello was actually the one that played on a lot of the Audio Slave stuff. So, just to bring that around, so that's an interesting point. Could you? We talked about supergroups a couple of episodes ago. Could you take Tom Schultz, Chris Cornell?
Don't do this to me.
Your dream.
You know what? I don't. Now,
The problem is you're mixing so many genres that it does it, you know.
No. That's was kind of what I was where I was leaning. I if man, I'm stuttering now. Chris Cornell to me was that was it. I mean, I'm an average Soundgarden fan and not even necessarily an Audio Slave fan, but Chris Cornell,
Yeah.
his vocals hit me. I mean, lyrically, yes, but I mean just the passion and the power in his voice always hit me differently than any other singer. But so did Brad Delp.
Right. And range, man.
Right. No,
Not to take anything away from Cornell, but he had a range, he had a set range, but I don't think Brad Delp had a range. I think it was all the way up and all the way down.
I've heard, 4.5, 5 octave range with Brad Delp. I can't speak to. I mean, I'm not. But anyway, that's comparing apples to apples, but it's like a Granny Smith and a Golden Delicious. They're different. They're apples, yes, but they're not comparable. I don't know. It's
No, I could see that. I mean, but I'm gonna keep kicking you. I'm gonna keep kicking right in the ribs. Do those guys work together? I mean, can you put together a historical supergroup that A, works, B, will give you a good sound, and C, can the egos live in the room? Because when we did talk about supergroups, we talked about a couple of them that were build-ups that we were just waiting for and everybody wanted to hear, and then it was like
Right.
Obviously you can't do Delp, you can't do Cornell, but
yeah.
if we're talking purely from historical times up till now, what goes in each spot? What goes in your singer? Is it Cornell or is it Delp?
See, where we talked about like supergroups, we talked about Temple of the Dog to stay on Cornell. I think I liked Temple of the Dog. I don't think it worked because Cornell and
Eddie
Vedder were so different. And I'm sorry, I will fight somebody to my grave on this. On Hunger Strike, Eddie Vedder should not have been on that song because Chris Cornell embarrassed him. Eddie Vedder is a great singer, great tone, great rock feel. That song, I think the point and the counterpoint in the vocals was way, way off. I still do not believe it worked. And it's a great song.
Well, I think that would lead into what we just said. I think if you were to take Chris Cornell and Brad Delp and put them on a song together,
I think it would work.
You do?
I do.
I think they're a little bit closer than Eddie and Chris Cornell were. I would agree with that. So it would be like taking Bon Scott and Brad Delp and putting them on a song together.
I disagree. I think they're further apart because Cornell Cornell had a pretty good range, but I mean, to a certain extent. And where he was at in his career when he passed away, he was more acoustic, more low. I mean, the cigarettes were catching up.
Oh, maybe I misunderstood you. You think that Delp and Cornell would work together or wouldn't work together?
Would work together.
See, like I said, I think maybe the quality of what they sing would work together. I agree.
It would have to be on. I mean, that's a can of worms, man. It would
I know.
have to be the right song, the right.
That's
project.
why we did this.
Right.
Well,
no, absolutely.
And I was going to point that out too. Is I think that when you listen to Cornell sing on Temple of the Dog, I think it's a different sound than Soundgarden. That it's different. It's a different Chris Cornell than Soundgarden, and
absolutely,
it's more melodic. I think it's more of what he was doing towards the end of his career than than what he was doing with Soundgarden. And I'm not saying that I think he didn't want to be in Soundgarden or wanted to be something different. I think he enjoyed that, but it was two different tones. I mean, it was two different people at that point.
And I think that was the best part of Chris Cornell is he could do Show Me How to Live by Audioslave, I mean, is this vocal shredding, performance. And he could do, he covered Sinead O'Connor's Nothing Compares to You, which I can barely listen to anymore because it's the song itself is impressive, but him doing it acoustically is almost crippling. I mean, if you're a music fan at all, and go check that out, put that on the Spotify list because it's scary.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what we were going with that is I think, if you put two sounds together that don't, I mean, they not necessarily don't work, but Eddie Vedder and Chris Cornell had different sounding voices. I don't, obviously they have different voices because they're different people, but they just had a different feel to their sound, and it fit their whole music. It fit, Pearl Jam with Eddie Vedder, I couldn't hear it with anybody else. Right. Soundgarden with somebody else, I couldn't hear it that way. But you're right, when they got together, I'm still going to stick with it. I think if you put Brad Delp and Bon Scott in the same song, it would not work.
Oh,
That's
no.
Oh, okay. I thought you disagreed with that.
Bon Scott, no. But see, there's the thing. Chris Cornell and Eddie Vedder were both grunge rockers. They're both bands. They toured together. They knew each other. So if you pick Chris Cornell and Brad Delp, for being in that mode, they're different genres. Yeah. Really. I mean, Boston was radio rock, light rock, corporate rock, whatever you want to call it. I mean, they didn't have any really heavy songs.
Right.
And, Rusty Cage and so on. I mean, they had Soundgarden had some really heavy stuff.
Yeah.
And I think when you mix like that, like I said, you'd have to find the right song. But Hunger Strike or like Temple of the Dog was more or less a grunge album, like if you want to call it a supergroup album, or it was basically Pearl Jam, with
Chris Cornell.
Chris Cornell helping out on vocals is what that came off as.
I think Vale played some of the guitars too,
right. So. I mean, it was, but at that time, I mean, you mixing, metal and rock. I mean, that's tough. I mean, like, because if you mixed, like Bon Scott and like a Sully Erna from Godsmack, that would work.
Right. And I think that's where I was trying to go with it. I was trying to peg you with putting together something that works, not necessarily something that we like, because if we're gonna pick guys we like to put together, Angus Young playing with pick somebody like Seven Dust or something it's not gonna work.
Right. No, I agree. That's the thing. You got to keep even the subgenres of rock, you kind of have to keep them, because I don't think, like, Steve Perry and Brad Delp probably would have worked.
Yeah, because they had the same idea and singing idea that each one did in their bands, and their voices are obviously going to be different because they're different people, but I think you're right. I think if you stay within kind of a genre, it's going to work. It's like,
they were both melodic, but like Paul Rodgers and Steve Perry wouldn't have worked from Bad Company. I don't think that would have worked.
But Paul Rodgers and what's his name from Deep Purple,
yes,
put those guys together, that's going to work.
Right. Or even like a Lou Gramm from Foreigner would have worked
exactly
with a Brad Delp. Something you have to keep that. To go harder, if, like I said, Sully Erna and Bon Scott would have worked because they were gravelly, but Sully's lower and Scott was higher. So but it was that, not screaming, but that really intense vocal, not much range, but very distinct voice. And I think they would have worked. I think that would have, if I had to pick one, it would probably be that to work together. I mean, if we're playing devil's advocate with no rules.
Yeah.
But there again, Robert Plant, I mean, who would you put him with someone? Who would you put him with someone?
Who would I put him with?
Would he work with like an Ozzy Osbourne?
No, God no.
Really? Like
No, I don't.
like early Black Sabbath?
I think
Think about their sounds now.
I know, but well, if you're talking about pure sound, maybe, but Led Zeppelin was so melodic compared to Black Sabbath being so, for lack of better words, a dirge rock sound.
Yeah.
So I think the pitch, like with Ozzy singing in his high pitch, I think they would match in that area, but I think the force at which they sang would be different. Like Ozzy was out in front and in your face. Plant was all about the melody and sing. I don't know.
But I mean, okay, again, this is not a parting shot, but like on Sweet Leaf, Ozzy on Sweet Leaf. I mean, I don't know. I think
I don't know. You're right. If you think of songs like "Immigrant Song,"
yeah,
and "Black Dog," maybe. I don't know. God, I'll have to go back.
Again, it'd have to be the right song and the right deal too. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the thing.
So where do you go with guitars then? I mean, man, you talk about mixing stuff.
Yeah, well, you start. I mean, like Slash and Angus Young. I immediately thought of those two would work together. Would work.
Well, if I had to mix people, I not taking anything away from Malcolm. Rest in peace on Malcolm, but not taking anything away from him. He was an amazing rhythm guitar player, but God, there are so many rhythm guitar players you could pick, and so many lead guitar players that you could pick that, would they match? I think you get a little more diversity out of that than you would the singers. I mean, you can get guys that can change their sound or change their tone a little bit, and
right. I think that's a lot easier.
Yeah,
a lot easier mix because some of the element of you can change guitars, you can change amps,
tone,
you can change tones to match. So that's kind of an unfair deal because singers sing where they sing.
Yeah, I think that's probably where you would end up stopping the big decisions. I mean, I think putting the right guitarist with the right singer would probably be a challenge, but I think you could probably stop it at guitar there because bass is going to end up being the same thing and drums are going to kind of end up being the same thing. We had Pete Maloney on from Dishwalla not too long ago, and to listen to the difference in some of the songs, he actually played with Tonic live for a while, but to listen to the sounds of those bands are kind of close. But I've seen him do other stuff. I've seen videos of him doing other stuff.
He even told us that, I mean, that's how he got into Dishwalla, was he was on the road with them, and the drummer basically hurt his shoulder, and he started filling in earlier and earlier in the sets. So, I mean, he was kind of interchangeable. So
yeah, and I think, not to take anything away from any of those instrument spots, but, I think it's actually adding to it. If you've got the talent to play jazz, and then you've got the talent to turn the drums into to rock, that's extreme talent. You're sought after in the industry. But I think that also makes those spots a little bit easier to navigate. So right. I'm gonna throw. I am actually gonna throw a parting shot at you. I'm gonna throw it in way early. We probably won't make this one too long because it's more tangents. But I'm gonna throw that conversation, and maybe this might turn it into a two-parter. But Bon Scott or Brian Johnson?
That's an easy call for me.
Okay. Now why?
I mean, on a slightly different level, not to get away from that too quickly. It's the Van Halen or Van Hagar argument.
Yeah.
But Brian Johnson is an immense talent and was back in Black 80 or 81.
Hold on. Before you go on, I need to correct something that you just said, though. Yes, it is Van Halen, Van Hagar, but Roth was kicked out, and they brought somebody else in.
Right.
So there was an animosity issue there, too.
Right.
Bon Scott died.
Right.
Brian Johnson came in.
Yes, so circumstantially they're different. I agree.
I think that makes a huge difference, though.
Really?
I do, because if you're talking about a band that chooses to go out and replace somebody who was near and dear to their hearts, and
Yeah.
put somebody else in there that is.
You think they tried harder with Brian Johnson than Van Halen did with Sammy Hagar?
No, I think that's what I'm saying is I think yes. To answer that question flat out, I'm going to say yes. I think
Yeah.
that,
That's
but
valid. That's valid.
but they also took, Sammy Hagar was an established person in the music industry.
That's true.
It's not like he was,
No, I get it. I see what you're saying. Yeah, no,
and
it's
when you
true.
look at Brian Johnson, he was playing with a kind of an unknown band. It was Geordie or Gordy or whatever it is, and that they found him and said, "Hey, we like this guy's prowess. We like his singing prowess on the stage. We like his physical prowess of personally. We think he fits in within the band." And said, "Hey, let's try this out and see how it works." And then they get him
Right.
up there, and it's like, this is perfect. Rest in peace, Bon Scott. But man, this guy is killing it. And I think when Van Halen, and I would have to do a little research on him, but I think when they decided that it was time to part ways with Roth, they sought, something that was going to make their band better, and not necessarily a great fit, but it was also that animosity issue with, Roth was just not cutting it, and he was going a different direction than they wanted to go, and they wanted to go a different direction, and it was not an easy parting of ways. So,
Yeah.
and I think the arguments in Van Halen, when you talk to people about it, they're adamant on both sides. It's either strictly one or strictly the other. When you
Right.
talk about AC/DC, I think you and I are the only two that really care about the differences.
No, you know what? I think you're right.
Because people are just like, hey, AC/DC.
Right.
It's good to me.
Right. And I started at, it was 80 or 81, right, when Back
I'm
in
looking.
Black came out?
Yeah, Bon Scott died in I think it was November of '80, but no, it wasn't November. It was '79, I think, when he died.
Right.
Yeah, it was July of 1980 when Back in Black was released, and we already
Right.
talked about it a couple weeks ago that it's number 2 on the
Right.
most albums ever sold. So
And I mean,
actually, Scott actually died in February of '80.
and the hate mail, but
Yeah, exactly.
I don't like Back in Black.
Yeah,
I'm not a huge fan of that album. I know it's epic, and obviously if it's number 2 on the album sales of all time, but I think AC/DC was at their prime, and I think most people bought that album because of what it was. But I mean, it's a great album. I mean, I'm not stupid. I mean, it is. It's an epic album.
I think I wouldn't say it's an epic album.
It
I
is.
think there's 4, maybe 5 epic songs on it. Like Back in Black, You Shook Me All Night Long, maybe Giving the Dog a Bone, and can you name 3 others? Well, we probably can, but can anybody out there name 3 other songs off Back in Black?
Well, that's what I mean. So I think it was more of a people wanting to see
what it was.
What it was, what it's going to happen. More of a
Right.
I mean, let's face it. You Shook Me All Night Long, or the song Back in Black. You're not going to deny those songs in rock history.
Mhm.
I mean, and obviously you're not going to deny the album in rock history and On the Landscape. And it's not a bad album. I just, of all the albums, and especially the ones that Brian Johnson has been with AC/DC on, Back in Black is not the one I would pick first.
So, what would you pick of his?
Well, for those about the rock, I think is
Really?
Yeah.
See, I would have went Razor's Edge because there's a lot of songs off Razor's Edge that are both hits on the radio and stuff that I could just sit and listen to.
Yeah, but see that album to me was almost, I mean, at the peak of, and I mean, this is again opinion, my opinion. Is
Spoiler alert, this is opinions.
Yeah, when they should have, that's the beginning of the end for me. That's when they should have stopped.
Well, I think that's but that's like, for me, and I'll equate this to let me see if I can peg exactly how you feel. For you, that's the Black Album by Metallica.
Yes.
For me, that's the Injustice for All album for Metallica. Because
okay, it's like one before.
Well, no, it's like the last really good thing they did. And because I hate Metallica's Black Album. I can't. A song comes on off that album, I turn it off on the radio.
Yeah, see, I don't really care for it either.
Well, but then maybe we are on the same. I don't know. See, I see Razor's Edge as the last really good thing they did. The Who Made Who album, is it actually Who Made Who, or is it Blow Up Your Video? I don't remember what the name of it is, but regardless, the Who Made Who album was probably one of the ones.
Soundtrack, that doesn't count.
Well, it's not. Is it really considered a soundtrack?
No, but
I know it came from Maximum Overdrive, which is still one of my favorite movies. Don't tell anybody, but I don't remember if that was actually listed as a soundtrack. It might actually be.
No, I don't think it was actually listed as a soundtrack, but I know the soundtrack was pretty much that album, so I think it's one of those deals.
It is actually Blow Up Your Video. 10th released album.
But
yeah, it doesn't actually list it as a soundtrack, even though, like, again, we know that it kind of is. But that, that album was kind of, a really good album, and the Razor's Edge was right after it, and I think they were hitting their peak at that point. And for me, while I love For Those About to Rock, I think that there's not too many other songs on there that I'm keen to. And I've listened to every AC/DC album probably 15 times myself.
Ad nauseum.
Yeah, exactly. So, for me, it's obviously the same with you. I'm privy to Bon Scott, and just the feel of those songs from, High Voltage, or, TNT, If You Want Blood, go all the way back to their early stuff, to Dirty Deeds, and
74 Jailbreak is just filthy.
God, that song is insane. And it's what's sad is, it's been remade a couple times, but every single time I hear it, it's like, this is a great song. Why is this song not, number one in the charts ever? But if you even look at, like, their last release with him, with Highway to Hell, that song is iconic. I mean,
sure,
you can never deny it, but just, and Let There Be Rock, that whole album is just, it screams of what rock is,
See, this is how stupid these conversations are, and I'm saying that with tongue in cheek, because when you said Let There Be Rock, I literally got goosebumps just thinking about it.
But the whole album is really good.
Stupid, cheesy video of him in the pulpit.
Yeah.
And Angus with that stupid, flimsy wannabe halo and stuff, and
yeah.
They were like, what? Were they 20, 21,
Angus couldn't have been. There's no way he could have been.
Right.
I seriously doubt. Because I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think he started playing with Malcolm when he was only 14 or 15.
Right. That's what the whole schoolboy thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
But when a whole lot of Rosie, I mean, when right there, and again, maybe it is just you and I because of the bias. We've picked half a dozen or 10 songs off the top of your head that are iconic, blow you away songs.
Yeah.
Now, with Brian Johnson, you could probably do the same thing, but maybe not as quickly because of the lack of bias. I mean, you could say, For Those About to Rock, Thunderstruck, help me out here.
You Shook Me All Night Long.
Shook Me All Night Long, Back in Black. Okay, we got 4 or 5 songs.
Who Made Who?
Who Made Who? But that you start tapering off a lot more rapidly with Brian Johnson, and I think that's why they're all good songs, and they've gotten radio play, but there's been a lot fewer songs that have gotten the heavy radio. I mean, You Shook Me All Night Long is a staple on any kind of rock-based, pop-based station.
Wedding.
Right. It's almost a cliche.
Yeah,
I mean, really,
it's getting there.
That song is almost a cliche now, and that's what I hate.
Well, let's circle this back around because there's something that I've kind of always wanted to do, and we never really just did it because we jumped into this whole idea. And episode 1 and episode 2 were one was recorded in my car while I was riding home, and just open mic, and it's not very good quality, but what we talked about is still good. 2 was a little bit better, and then from there it kind of just shot up. But we never prefaced any of this with who we are, what we do. We're obviously talking about our biases. We're talking about what we like, and it's a lot of it's opinion. And I've gotten a lot of feedback from friends of mine, like Mike Simmons, rails me all the time as soon as I say something that he doesn't like calling Pink Floyd overrated. He just called me out on it the other day, but that's what we do, and we're not saying we're not going to review new rock bands and tell you our opinion. We're not going to
Sure.
reach out into prog rock because that's Pete Pardo's place. But we're just going to sit and talk about what we like and what we feel we want. And, that gets influenced by everybody that listens. But, who are you? What do you do? What's your life in music? Can you just kind of give me a quick 30-second to 2-minute synopsis of where you are?
Speaking to me or the listener?
Oh, no, I'm talking, listener at the end, but you first.
Me in a nutshell is I was raised around music. Our mother taught exercise class like jazzercise or whatever, aerobics, when we were very little. And I remember her mixing. She had mixtapes. The lady actually cut mixtapes off 8 tracks. Now that takes talent, because when they skip in the middle of songs, she had some board skills, some editing skills. She had
never really thought of it that way, but yes.
She had a boom box that had an 8-track and a cassette on it, and she would record the 8 tracks onto the cassettes on her boom box, and she still has that boom box and the 8 tracks. But anyway, I remember early on upstairs in our house in Northwest Ohio.
Oh, you can say Vaughnsville. I've got a friend of mine that I made a connection with there. So
okay, in Vaughnsville. Greater Northwest Ohio, and I remember laying on the carpet watching. She had 45s and 33 albums that were. I remember where there was a skip in the one Styx. In Mr. Roboto, she had this song Mr. Roboto by Styx. She had the 45, the single, and I remember there was a skip in it. And I remember where the skip is, and when I hear that song today, I expect that skip. That's how deluded I am. But the Blondies, the ELOs, the Styx, all of those.
Bob Seger.
Dr.
Hook and the Medicine Show.
We got a lot of influence from our
ABBA,
huge, and that kind of formed our musical prowess. My musical prowess, I should say. I'm speaking of me. And then teenage year, we moved down here. When we moved to Florida early, I was 10 or 11 years old. I didn't have that. So I started listening to the radio, and it's still on. There's still the radios. Q105 is still a radio station here in Greater Tampa Bay area. And I remember DeBarge and Starship and whatever pop radio was in the mid and late 80s. And then I kind of got out of music for a little bit, and we moved again, and we came out here, and then I remember Craig playing, he went to the flea market, and we would get Iron Maiden posters from the flea market and of Eddie the Head, and I never even really listened to Iron Maiden. I just thought the posters were cool. And then Craig started listening to AC/DC. I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool. That's really heavy. And the burgeoning rock station 98 Rock in Tampa Bay played This Love by Pantera, and I couldn't. I was like, man, that's really great. But prior to that, the Anthrax, I mean, late 87, 88, I heard Anthrax, and then I started to hear Pantera, in the early 90s, and then it started to get really heavy, and I really fell into that genre of really extremely heavy rock, and down the rabbit hole, wound up as far down as like Cannibal Corpse and so on and so forth, because that's not my thing, but it's like something about it spoke to me, and across the genres, I've listened to rock, to rap, to blues, to a lot of punk, Authority Zeros in the last 20 years, more or less mainstream punk music, ska. I got into ska in the 90s, Mighty Mighty Boss Tones. So there's like a wide range of influences, and through it all, mine's purely opinion driven. I never played an instrument. I can't carry a tune in a bucket, but if I like it, I like it, and that goes for anything. Even as much as I don't like country, if I hear a country song that speaks to me, I'll listen to it. I don't just I don't dislike things blindly or like things, you know, I listen to what moves me. So to tie a bow around this, the first time I heard More Than a Feeling by Boston, I'm like, wow, that guy's voice and the guitar work and the rich fullness of the sound, that it spoke to me. And then I started listening to the lyrics.
Yeah.
I'm like, wow,
Yeah.
and then again, when that progressed into hearing what, Phil Anselmo from Pantera had to say, I was like, wow, that guy, that guy's pissed about something, and I don't even know why, but I'm pissed too. Let's break stuff, and that turned into this love affair of talking about it, listening to it, and surrounding myself, whether it was at concerts or going to watch you play or going to other concerts or friends that listen to music. Hey man, you need to check this out. That's what I live for. I've had people bring bands into my life that I don't know. I honestly don't know how I would be if I didn't hear these bands. People will show me bands or let me listen to bands, and I would actually take road trips and go to concerts out of state, to hear it, because that's as close as they would come to see them, to hear them, to feel them, to get that vibe. And it's tapered off as the older I get. That's been fewer and further between, but I mean, I'll still go. Not too long ago, I went on a Monday night at, till 1 o'clock in the morning to see, to see the lead singer of a band playing acoustic set in a bar an hour drive away. So there's still that element, but I just love music. I don't know. It sounds kind of corny, but
Nah, it doesn't, because that's why we're here. That's why we're, like you said, we both have kids and we get up early Saturday morning. And when I say early, we're up at 6:30 and we're on, at 7 talking, and we do that because we care. And, there's a lot of missed conversations where I call you on the way home from my work and I've got an hour commute. So I talk to you about, the same kind of stuff. And,
sure.
it ends up turning into, hey, let's stop talking about this because this will make a good podcast, to, hey, we're going to talk for the entire hour. I have to drive home and we're still not done. So,
Right.
But that's it. I mean, that's, you tied the perfect bow on it. We love music. We love to talk about it. We love to listen to it. We love to dig into it. And, I'm going to do my history on the next one. I'm going to echo some of the stuff that you said, but obviously I took a different route. But I'll save that kind of for the end of the next episode or a couple episodes down the road. But I appreciate you, kind of filling everybody in, because we never did that. We kind of just jumped into this and said, hey, let's start, recording it and putting it out there. And we didn't really step back and say, who's George? Where is his music and
Yeah.
why and stuff.
Yeah, I don't have credentials. I've never written articles. I don't have, a website. Never played in a band. I'm a music lover. And that's why it's so important for Craig and I, for if you're listening to this, is the feedback.
Right.
Again, this isn't a paid gig. We don't get up early on Saturday mornings for a paycheck or anything like that. This is just strictly because if one person reaches out and said, "Hey man, you need to check this band out," we're gonna check that band out.
Yeah.
If one person emails and says Boston sucks and here's why, I'm gonna listen to it. Just
and
like
you're,
if
and you're probably
listening,
going to respond.
if you listen to a podcast that says country music sucks and here's why, and you disagree, change my mind. I
Yeah.
mean that I'm a firm believer in this whole thing. Yes, it's opinionated, but it's also 100% open-minded and no disrespect to anybody. This is all opinion. I mean, this is about as unintentional or what's the word I'm looking for?
It's not all opinion. It is a lot of our opinion, but we do some research. I mean, we look things up, and we've spent our lives in it. Like, you know, if we're talking about the Beastie Boys, it's because I've listened to every single one of their albums, probably again as nauseum, and I've read articles on the individual members in the band itself, and I've seen them live. You know, I've seen them play their punk music live with real instruments. It's not totally based on opinion, but it's definitely jaded in our directions of how we feel.
And by the way, we just passed the 6-year anniversary of
I know.
Adam Yauch dying too.
Whew.
It's dating. It's just, but yeah, it's going by quick.
It is. But we'll leave that tied up as a bow. I mean, we're kind of towards the end anyways. But like I said, I appreciate you telling me, you know, where you came from, and I'll definitely share at some point in time in the future. I don't want to make this too long. I'm gonna, you know, kind of cut this to where it needs to be, about just short of an hour. But you know, we'll come back and do it again next time. And I think we'll actually have a topic next time. But I enjoyed this. I enjoyed just kind of going down rabbit holes.
Yeah, no, it's definitely cool this time.
Cool. Well, we'll catch up to you next couple weeks then, brother.
All right, brother. We'll talk to you later.
Yep, see ya.
We want to talk to you about music, so reach out to us at musicmusingfeedback@gmail.com.
You can also find us on most social media sites by searching Music Musing or George or Craig Seibert, Sybert.
And you can also find us on Twitter as musicmusing_ as well.
Thank you for listening to this Music Musing podcast.